Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Entrepreneur Hot Seat. I am your host and founder, Andy Storch, and today I am just absolutely pumped to be joined by my friend Aaron Walker. And Aaron, if you don't know who he is, over the course of his career has successfully started, built, and sold a dozen businesses, having invested 38 years as an entrepreneur and 37 years as a husband, as well as a father and a grandfather. Aaron demonstrates this huge level of commitment. He's overcome catastrophic events, succeeding in the face of adversity, and holding steadfast to his faith has equipped Aaron with the experience and wisdom necessary to teach others how to live their life with intentionality, meaning, and purpose. Aaron to date has been interviewed over 350 times. Wow, I'm excited to be on that list. I know, Aaron, today you're also a coach. You run mastermind groups, and you have a book coming out soon with a lot of the lessons that you have learned and been teaching to others over the years. So just really excited to have you on the podcast today, Aaron.
Andy, thanks, buddy. It's a pleasure to be on Entrepreneur Hot Seat. You read that bio. It made me tired. I said, my goodness, there's too much going on here. But anyway, hey, man, thanks for having me on. I've been pumped to be your guest.
Well, appreciate it. And, you've been doing a lot of things over the years, and I want to get into some of that stuff. It could make you tired maybe listening to it. But and I know you've told your story many times, but for those in my audience who are not familiar with your story, not familiar with maybe we could start with a little bit of background of, where you came from and how you got to where you are today.
Thanks, Andy. I appreciate that. I'm going to make it real short. I just want to give context to who I am, what I'm about. I want to make this interview about your audience and how they too can have a successful and significant life. But real quick, I'll give you a 30,000-foot view of what I've done and what I've accomplished over the past 38 years. Started out really early at 13 years old, working for a guy in the retail business. Started my own at 18 with two partners because I didn't have any money, so I had to go get a partner in order to have the resources. At 27 years old, I sold out. I retired. I sold out to a Fortune 500 company. That lasted about 18 months. I was getting in the bed in the middle of the day, and I was getting fat and lazy, my wife said. So she woke me up one day. She said, "This is not what I signed up for." So I went back, bought the company I started with when I was 13 years old, spent the next 10 years growing it to about 4 times the size it was when I bought it. And then, Andy, my life changed forever. August 1st, 2001, I was headed to the office. Things were really good for me at the time. We had a place on the beach. We had a great house here. 2 beautiful little girls. Life couldn't have got any better. Until Enrique decided to cross the street in front of me and catch a local bus and didn't look my way. And unfortunately, I ran over and killed a pedestrian that day. And my life came to a screeching halt. And I don't know, Andy, if you've ever been involved in anything like that at all, but your life kind of slowed us down. It's like watching a movie, if you will. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe something this bad has happened. And I didn't want to turn around and look, but I did. Cars were stopping everywhere. And I jumped out, ran over there, and elderly gentleman was laid down, face down in the street and motionless. And make a long story short, he lived 3 days in the Vanderbilt trauma unit here in Nashville, Tennessee. And man, it was tough. It was just tough dealing with those things. And so anyway, I went to Robin and I said, listen, I'm going to retire. I'm done. I can't handle this. And I did, sold my business, and we took the next 5 years off and kind of got my legs back underneath me. And she said, all right, you're getting fat and lazy again. It's time to go back to work. So we went in the construction industry and we built high-end residence and small commercial properties for the next 9 years. We took that company to number 1 in Middle Tennessee for the next 3 consecutive years, and I decided to retire at 50, and I did. And a couple of mastermind members that I've been in masterminding with for a couple of decades, one of them is Dave Ramsey, Dan Miller, Ken Abraham, Jeff Mosley, some of those names you may or may not recognize. They said, what are you going to do now? And I said, I'm going to take my butt down to the Caribbean, and I'm going to sit on the front porch and rock myself to sleep. And they laughed, and they said, you're not going to do that. You've retired twice. It's not worked out well for you. And what we think you should do is coach. And I started laughing. I said, I'm not going to coach anybody. I'm done. I'm tired. I've been working since I was 13. I'm 50 years old now. I'm done. Dan Miller said, that'll last about 90 days. And he said, you'll be doing something else. So they invited me to do their coaching programs. One was Innovate with 48 Days to the Work You Love, and the other one was the Entree Leadership Mastery Series with Dave Ramsey. So I went and did those, and Andy, I fell in love with that process immediately. So Robin and I prayed about it, we talked about it, and I decided to launch a business. And that is what we know today is View from the Top, and we have national and international clients. We have 8 mastermind groups that we facilitate, and we've got the most phenomenal community on the planet. So out of all the businesses I've owned together, collectively, they don't measure up to the absolute purpose and joy that I'm experiencing from leading this men and View from the Top.
Oh, that is fantastic. And I know that you just went through a lot of adversity and accomplishments and different things in a very short amount of time to kind of make that intro succinct, and obviously overcame some serious adversity with the car accident that you mentioned from many years ago that caused you to take some time off, and just really can't imagine going through that experience. Just really, really difficult. You talked about the getting into the coaching business, and your friends in your mastermind group talking to you about getting into coaching, leveraging your experience there. It definitely seemed like a good and obvious move. Why did you start creating these mastermind groups as part of your business as well? How did you get into that? And maybe you can talk a little bit about the importance of mastermind groups, especially for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, because it wasn't on my radar at all. I'd been involved in these groups. Dave Ramsey, a couple decades ago, had invited me to be in his mastermind group. And the backstory to that, I met Dave at a local Chamber of Commerce breakfast, and I went up and introduced myself. This was in 1995. And Dave had one station in Nashville, Tennessee, here where we both live. And he invited me to be his advertiser. And I said, no, thank you. And he said, no, well, I'll give you advertising. Just give me a try. And I'm like, hey, it's way different today, I can promise you. But then in 1995, I'm like, well, I can't lose, if it's free. So I tried it. 3 days into that, I called him and I said, these people have drank the Kool-Aid. I'm in, sign me up. So I spent 21 years on the show as an advertiser, and we became very good friends. In the course of that, he invited me to join his mastermind group. I never even heard of a mastermind group. I didn't even know what a mastermind group was. I said, I'll join, but what is it? He said, just come to the office and you'll see. So I went to his conference room and started meeting with these phenomenal guys. And we spent more than a decade in Dave's office over the next 10 or 12 years, hour and a half every Wednesday morning doing life together. And I really found the value in being around like-minded guys that would challenge you, that would help you go through upper limit challenges, that would stop you when you were about to run off the road. And these guys, I just fell in love with them. I mean, they were just amazing guys. And through that process, I learned really what character was about, honesty, high moral values. These guys really operated at a different level than I had ever been exposed to. And I said, I want to spend more time around guys like this. But what got me started doing it was that I was on John Lee Dumas' Entrepreneur on Fire. It was my first interview. Most people start out, with smaller shows. I said, I'm going straight to the top.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one to start with. And I heard that interview. It was fantastic.
Somebody told me, because I've been in bricks and mortar all my life, and they said, hey, you need to get on a podcast. Same way about the masterminds. I said, I'll get on it. What is it? And they said, well, here's what it is. And they explained it to me. And 3.5, 4 years ago, I'd never even heard of a podcast, because I've been in this bricks and mortar business and never been exposed to a podcast. And so I said, hey, who's the guy that's got it going on right now? And somebody said, John Lee Dumas has got it going on, Entrepreneur on Fire. So I sat on my patio in 20 minutes. I wrote my story, sent it to him. That night, I got a response back. And I told my wife, I said, this is an autoresponder. And she said, what's an autoresponder? And I said, well, everybody gets this. Everybody wants to be on his show. And the next morning I got up and looked at my email again, and it was his calendar. It said, hey, pick your day. I said, I'll be dadgum. I am going to be on that show. Well, Andy, I can't even begin to tell you, man. I did the show, and John Lee loved it and really promoted it. And my calendar filled up immediately. I had clients nationally and internationally hired me to coach them. And I even had a waiting list at that time. And I started thinking about it. I said, well, there's a real need for what I've got to teach. So I started a mastermind group, and we filled it up immediately, and then another one and another one, and they kept growing, and I kept filling up the groups. And then I was on Pat Flynn's show and filled up 2 groups, and it just went from there. And I thought, man, this is unbelievable. So we started a community at a much lower price point just to be able to spread our message. And God has really blessed that, and it's growing immeasurably as well. And that's kind of how I started doing the mastermind groups, because I knew how beneficial it had been to me over all the years, and I wanted to share the message that we were trying to teach. And our message is simple. It's how to live a successful and significant life. And I'd love at some point during the interview to talk about the transitional point for me at going from not just successful, but to significant living.
Yeah, I think that would be a good topic to get into. I heard you talk about that. The first time I heard you was on John Lee Dumas's podcast, actually. And that idea of success to significance, I think it hit me pretty hard, like it did a lot of people who were listening to that. And, I think I would love to get into that topic. Just to close the loop on masterminds, though, I've been in mastermind groups, and I know the importance and the value of it. Why has it been so popular, and what is the value that your members get out of being in those groups?
Well, here's the thing, Andy. You only have one life experience. You only have one filter. You only have one lens by which to see things. No matter how hard you try, you can't see it the other way because you haven't had the experience. You haven't had the background. You just don't have the filters to process things more than one way. Fortunately, when you subject yourself to the scrutiny of other people that don't have anything to gain or lose as a result of what they tell you, you're going to get the truth. If you go to a friend or you go to a family member, they're going to be biased. They want to tell you what you want to hear. And mastermind groups are not that way. Mastermind groups are to make you better, not make you feel good. So when you surround yourself with 8 or 10 other people on a regular basis, they learn your personality. They learn the things that you're interested in. They learn your background. They know how you process things, and they're better able to help you. Robin and I, my wife of 37 years, we were going to do a business deal not long ago. And she said, well, what do your guys think? And I said, well, I haven't told them yet. So I went and told them. 8 of the 10 guys told me not to do it. And so I had to go back with my tail tucked between my legs and say, we've made a mistake. And I didn't understand completely until they explained the position that they were coming from. And I said, you don't know what you don't know. And when I told Robin and I thought about it myself, it made perfect sense. But I just didn't have all the information and the wisdom, the experience of the other participants in the mastermind group. It's the same thing with upper limit challenges. We all have a ceiling. Gay Hendricks wrote a great book called The Big Leap. And he tells us that we all have upper limit challenges. And when you're in a group like that, they can either hold you back and tell you don't do it. Here are the reasons based on your personality or maybe your profile, the things you've experienced before, or your successes or wins or losses. They have a framework. They have a reference to go by. They also can say, hey, stop being afraid, and let me tell you why, and they can push you through that. There's huge levels of accountability. I'll give you a great example. About 4 years ago, I went to our mastermind group, and I wanted to write a book, but I was afraid. And the reason I was afraid to write the book is because one of my mastermind members is Ken Abraham. That'll mean something to some people, but others it won't. Ken's got 115 books in print. He's written Joel Osteen's book, Viente Fox, John Ashcroft, Let's Roll by Lisa Beamer. He's written all these books.
He's prolific,
Payne Stewart. Yeah. Well, I mean, the biggest names in the industry, he's the ghostwriter that's written their books. He's sold millions, tens of millions of copies. Dave Ramsey's in the group, and he's got a number of New York Times #1 bestsellers. Dan Miller's got 6 or 8 books in print. And I thought, who is Big A? I mean, if I put this book out, maybe nobody buys it but my daughters and my mom and my wife. What am I going to do then? And I started having this pride well up within me. Well, when I got up before my group with Dan Miller and told the story, one guy that's in there, you may or may not have heard of, his name's Ken Davis. Ken wrote a book called Fully Alive, and it was a phenomenal, still is awesome book. And he said, Aaron, I want to stop you for a second, because I was very transparent. I shared with him what I just did with you. He said 17 people have written me letters and told me that they did not commit suicide as a direct result of reading my book. He said, so how do you measure against selling millions of copies or the ability to transform somebody else's life radically? If your book can change one person's life, he said, will it not be worth it? And I said, you're dadgum right, it'll be worth it. And I'm going to write the book. And I did. I sat down, took me over 2 years to write the book. David Hancock picked it up. He's a publisher. He owns Morgan James Publisher. And he picked it up and he said, man, we got to do this book. I'm pretty fired up about it, Andy, because all the major bookstores have agreed to take it. We've got some of the most incredible endorsers in the book. It's getting rave reviews right now because I really walk you through kind of a memoir. It's kind of my story along with how to help you overcome obstacles. There's a chapter in there called Blindsided where I tell in great detail about the wreck because we all can be blindsided at any time. I talk about breaking free. That's one of the chapters in the book where we have obstacles that are holding us back, and I teach you how to overcome that. I tell you what the value of mastermind groups are. I teach you how to choose wisely, how to overcome bitterness in your own life because it can be a prison and it can really stifle your creativity. And the book is really a way that you can live your life so that you too can be successful, very much so because I want you to be, and not only successful, but significant and look outward and help other persons achieve their goals and dreams. And I teach you how to do it in the book.
Oh, that is great. I love all of that, and I've already pre-ordered the book. I'm excited about it, and I love that you ended up doing it as a result of standing up in that mastermind group and talking to your members and getting that encouragement. And I can completely relate to that because I'm launching this podcast as a result of the mastermind group that I'm in, because I said, I've been thinking about this, but you know what? There's hundreds, if not thousands of other podcasts out there that are, doing similar things on, similar topics. Who am I to, try to do the same thing? I'm so late to the game. And people said, yeah, but you have a different voice. You have a unique voice. And if you help one or two or three people, will it be worth it? And the answer is, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The truth of the matter is, I want to correct you though. The truth of the matter is you're not late to the game. I would venture to say 8 out of 10 people that you know personally don't even know what a podcast is or don't even listen to podcasts. They've only been around about 10 years, and there are 400,000 podcasts in the U.S. alone. Well, there are 300 million people. Okay, so that's a very, very small percentage in relationship to the amount of people that are here. I've been on podcasts that get 2 million, 3 million, 4 million downloads a month. There's a big demand for it, and I would venture to say that you're on the cusp of the cutting edge of podcast. You're not late to the game.
Oh, well, I appreciate you saying that. And I do. I think there is, and you can probably relate to this, you get kind of ingrained in a certain circle or a topic, and you just start talking to a lot of people. For me, I know a lot of people that have podcasts, and you start thinking, well, everybody's got a podcast. But like you said, not everybody even knows what a podcast is. They haven't started listening to them yet. I know you believe strongly in the future of it because I interviewed your partner, Tom Schwab, the other day for this show, who's got a business interview valet, which I think you're a part of or investor in, right. Which is really all about taking advantage of the growth and future of podcasts. But putting that aside, I want to get back to the book, but I also want to go back to something you mentioned, which is this idea of success to significance, which I'm going to assume that you have mentioned in the book, especially since the subtitle "View from the Top" is "Living a Life of Significance." Maybe you could start by talking a little bit about what this means and why it's so important, especially for entrepreneurs to be thinking about, and some of the lessons that you teach from that in the book.
Immediately, people think when I talk about success and significance that you've got to pick one or the other, and there's nothing further from the truth. See, I kind of thought that early on. I've got to focus and devote my effort and energy and attention to maybe one or the other, and I chose success, early on because I had a family to feed. I don't want people to get the wrong idea and think I'm saying, hey, sell all you got and give it to the poor. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying go make all you can make. I want you to make money because broke people can't help people financially, right? And I want you to be able to make a lot of money. What I want people to do, though, is not make it their God, not make it the only reason that you're doing it. So you've got to have great amount of purpose. That what keeps you going. It's not the money, because you'll find out that the money doesn't scratch the itch like you think it's going to. You keep moving the bar. Hey, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy if I get another store. I'll be happy when the mortgage is paid off. I'll be happy when the kids get out of school. I'll be happy when I have another $100,000. And I want you to listen to me loud and clear. If you don't hear anything else I'm saying in this interview, it is not going to scratch the itch like you think. I promise you. What will scratch the itch is when you have purpose in your life. There's a reason that you get up. My purpose in life is helping ordinary men become extraordinary. And when I hear men getting over addictions, or their marriage is better than it's ever been, or their business has doubled and tripled as a result of growing their character and their honesty and their integrity, having high moral values, they're doing it the right way. They're not doing it shady and under the table, but they're doing it the correct way. They can raise their kids and grandkids and show them what being a man of integrity is about. Those are the things that will carry you through. But when you're doing it just for the money, that soon withers and fades and dies away, because you're putting your confidence and trust in things that is going to rust and the moth are going to eat. But when you put it into things that are not tangible, like relationships and the other traits that I mentioned, character and honesty and integrity, those are the things that last. And so I just want to encourage you to consider why you're doing what you're doing each and every day. Got to have purpose.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things I like to talk about that I think is related to this and other topics is that everything you do every day is a choice, right? You're prioritizing your time and how you spend it, and you can, especially if you are a father like us, or even a grandfather like you. You've got a family, you've got businesses, you've got hobbies, you've got all kinds of things you want to do. And whether it's working those extra hours to make more money, or maybe working less to spend more time with your family, that sounds great, but then maybe you're making less money. Everything you do is a choice and is prioritization. And some people prioritize just making as much money as possible at the expense of relationships and having a close family, while others maybe say, I just want to have fun. I've heard you talk on Larry Hagner's podcast the other day about your father not being a great businessman, but he enjoyed having fun and being with the family, and he kind of prioritized that, right? And I don't presume to know that much about your father, just heard you talk about that recently. But everybody's making choices all the time.
Well, see, the thing is the real challenge for most entrepreneurs is they think they can balance their work and their personal life. And that's not true. Balance by definition is equal on both sides, and they should not be equal. And let me tell you, Rory Vaden wrote a great book, and in it he was talking about we must prioritize our priorities. And so you got to put the big rocks in first. I don't even want to balance it. I don't want them to be even. For me, I'm a Christian, so my faith is very important. And then my wife, and then my children, then my grandchildren, and then my business. And when you get those things out of order, it's going to come back to haunt you. Now, you'll spend an inordinate amount of time at your office making a lot of money. Now, your office doesn't have a memory, but your children do. You only get one opportunity to raise those children. I can teach you how to make money. You can make more money, you can lose money, but you only got one go through with those kids. You only got one go through with that wife, and you better make it count. Because I tell people all the time, you'll come home with a pocket full of money to a house full of strangers if you're not careful. And then what good did it do you? There's a very, very famous person that will remain anonymous for this conversation. But I looked him up, and he made $250 million. And he was on the road 250 to 280 days a year. And he missed Christmas a few years ago. 2 little girls at home, 8, 12 years old, and his wife. And he came home 2 days after Christmas because he was on a business deal. And his wife said, "We're done." He gave up his family. He gave up his little girls over $250 million. And I heard him interviewed about a year and a half ago here in Nashville at the Inc. conference. And here's what he said. It broke my heart. He said, "Yeah, I did. I lost my wife and I lost my children. But the truth of the matter is there's a lot more money to be made. And I'll be on the road this year 300 days.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know what? That's a guy that's got his priorities out of order. And it doesn't matter. But listen, A lot of us would say, I would never do that. Well, let's talk about that for a second. If you're working 12 or 14 hours a day and you're leaving before the kids get up, and you get home at night and kiss your wife good night, and you go to bed and you don't get to eat dinner with your kids, and you're not at their piano recitals, and you're not at their ball practices, and you're not at their ball games, and you're out of town on their birthday, you're just as guilty. You're just as guilty as the guy that made $250 million. We have a responsibility. It's incumbent on us to follow through with what we signed up for the day we stood on that platform and we took our spouse and we said, I do, for better or for worse, for richer or for poor. And we have a responsibility, and it's not somebody else's responsibility to fill your role. And I want to encourage you to decide what you want. I want you to decide what's important to you. And I want you to look at your wife and say, I'm doing this in good conscience. And look at your kids. You don't want to someday have plenty of money and then want that relationship with your kids. And they say, sorry, Dad, it's too late. You do not want to do that. I promise you it will come back to haunt you. You do not want to have those regrets.
Yeah, that is, boy, just really important, and something that I think about all the time, being a husband and a father of two. Am I spending enough time there with them and doing the things that are much more significant than making money? But I'm thinking about the flip side. What do you say to, entrepreneurs who say, well, that's great. I really do want to spend time with my family, but I'm trying to build this business and I need to work 14 hours a day in order to make this work and pay our bills and pay our mortgage right now, because it's just early on and we haven't really found that much success yet.
Yeah, you're not going to like what I've got to say about that, but here we go. So here's the thing. We can say, Andy, with our mouth that something's important, but our actions are screaming. We do what's important. It doesn't matter. I don't even care what you say. It's what you do. A friend of mine was talking to his dad. He was an adult. He was talking to his dad. He said, Dad, I need to go see Nana, and I really love her, and I really want to go see her, but I just haven't had time. He said, you don't really love her. He said, what do you mean? He said, if you really loved her, you'd go see her. And he said, no, I do love her, and I want to go see her. He said, she's not important to you. What's more important to you is working, because what you do through your actions is what we show is important. Now, here's where we get in trouble, Andy, and this is where I'm going to get some pushback from some of your listeners. What we do is we go out there and try to build a lifestyle, and we mortgage ourselves to the hilt, and then we have to work 14 hours a day to pay for the things that we really shouldn't have bought to begin with. Dave Ramsey says all the time, live like no one else today, so later you can live like no one else. Robin and I elected to do that before Dave Ramsey was on the air. We decided to delay gratification to a later date. And we poured all the money back into the business, and we paid off a 10-year loan in 36 months, and we put the money back into the company. And we repeated that multiple times, and we grew as we could. We didn't overextend. A lot of the problems today is we live in a microwave society, and we want it. We want it now. We'll do whatever we've got to do. Whatever the payment is, we'll pay it. And we're living a very hollow, shallow life, because on the inside, there's a lot of discussions and arguments going on among couples to put on a facade for their friends and their family members and their peers to appear to be living one way. And the truth of the matter is they're crumbling and falling on the inside. And I know that's very painful to hear, but it's the truth. And we need to scale back a little bit and put our identity in the right thing, and quit putting our identity in the tangible possessions and titles that we're so puffing our egos up for. And then we wouldn't have to work 14 hours a day. But the truth of the matter is, if you're there, you can work your way out. So stop the bleeding today. Stop living a facade. Stop living a life that's not true to yourself and to your family. Because what we're doing is we're conveying that to our children. Now they're seeing, and they're going to replicate and model the lifestyle that you've lived, and we just continue down the ages. And so put a stake in the ground and say, hey, I'm going to figure this out today. Whatever it takes today, we're going to be truthful and honorable. My family's going to be first, and then my job. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Goes, like I said before, it goes back to priorities and how are you spending your time. And, another thing that you kind of mentioned there is that people spend a lot of time or money, or at least emotional capital, thinking about what other people are doing and, the life they need to live. Or, I think it's easy to look on social media and other things and think, man, those people they got it figured out. They got a great relationship. That guy makes a lot of money. Look at his house, look at his car. but there's a lot of things going on there that you don't know about until you really get into it and ask them, right? And it may not be as great as you think.
See, what's happening is I'm coaching all those guys. I know the truth. I know what they're dealing with. I know the mortgages that they have. I know the debt they're in. I know that there's no relationship with their spouse.
Mm-hmm.
I know they don't know their children. They're a very hollow person putting on a facade to the community. And the truth is they're dying. They're crumbling. They're burning on the inside, and they're entrapped. They don't know how to get out. And so all I'm saying is back to the mastermind group, back to the accountability group. You need to have people around you that challenge you to ask you the real questions weekly, ongoing, each and every week to help you work through these trials. 30 years now, I've been meeting with guys one day a week for an hour and a half. We meet on Friday mornings now. It's my accountability group, and they ask me the tough questions. I want to be honorable to my wife, to my children, to myself, to my business, to my community, and I can't do that unless I have people around me challenging me.
Man, that is good stuff. And one of the things they got you to do was to actually go out and write this book. So I want to make sure that we get to spend a little bit more time on this, because you have done so much over the years. Buying and selling, running a dozen businesses, had all these different experiences, and then coaching all these men, whether through one-on-one or mastermind groups. And I'm sure there's just tons of lessons that have come out of that.
Andy, I want to share something. This is a great time. I want to share something about that, because I don't want to leave the wrong impression here. I don't have it all figured out. I'm a knucklehead, just like a lot of your audiences. I don't want to give the Facebook persona, Big A's got it all figured out. That's not the case, because I have challenges. I have disagreements with my wife. I have places in my life that I need to work on. And I'll be really transparent to your audience right now. So I love what I do. But even loving what I do causes challenges, because I want to do it too much. And Robin looked at me one day recently and she said, "Haven't you worked enough today? I mean, like it's 7:30 at night. I mean, are you not done?" And it caused a little disagreement between us. And we sat there and we talk like I'm talking now when we have a disagreement. I refuse to fight and holler and scream and slam doors and leave. That's ridiculous. Like, we're adults, we should act like it. I finally had to make a commitment. I said, "You know what, Robin, you're right." I couldn't defend it. She was right. I had been working too much recently because of this book launch. And so I put some boundaries in place, because Robin is more important than my business. View from the top, all the men I coach. Robin's more important than anything, period. And here's what I do now. I go home now. I leave my phone in the car. I leave my computer in my backpack. I don't turn it on. And I said, "Hey, when I get home, 5 or 6 o'clock, I'm done. And tomorrow morning when I get in the car and go back to the office, I'll do that," because she's that important. And to be honest, totally honest, that's hard. That's really hard to do, because my job never can quit. I've got clients all over the world, so somebody's up all the time, right? I can text them, call them, email them, do social media. We have a big social media following. There's always questions to be answered. There's always new posts. And the first little bit that I did it, it was like jonesing. I was like, oh, I'm shaking, because it's an addiction. It is. I don't care what any of you think or say. Social media can be an addiction. The electronics can become an addiction, just like a drug, because it gives those endorphins. You get that next little tweet or next compliment or next Facebook post, next video, and you get where you need it more and more and more. And I was catching myself, even at a traffic light, I was like looking down to see if there was a notification. I was checking my phone when there was no notification. It was nuts. And I'm like, I've got to get a handle on this, or I'm going to cause a problem in my relationship. And so I had to set real strong boundaries to do that. Guys, I don't know what your thing is. I don't know what the problem is, but set boundaries. Go to your wife, go to your husband, ever who it is, and say, "Hey, let's talk through this. Let's get a handle on it," because nothing is more important than our relationship.
That's so important. I'm glad you brought that up, because everybody does have challenges. Nobody has it all figured out. And it's easy for us. I say that all the time, and it's still easy for me to say, "Look, I've got the great Aaron Walker on my podcast right now. This guy's got it all figured out. He's done this and he's done all these things. And, he's all about balance and significance." But, even you admit to succumbing to the addictions of social media and checking devices, just like everybody else does. And people talk about millennials doing all the time. So I guess the follow-up question would be from that, what you started leaving the devices at home and really being more present at home, but did that cause you to have to sacrifice things with your business because you have clients paying a lot of money who are all over the world who are looking for your time. Did you do anything different besides put that stuff away? Did you outsource? What did you do?
You know what I'm seeing happen, Andy? The truth is it makes me more conscious and aware and a lot more productive when I am working. I really pay attention a lot more because I know now that I don't have 1, 2, 3, 4 more hours and I still want to get it done. So you've got to do one of two things. You've either got to outsource it, get a virtual assistant. We have a few virtual assistants that do things for us. I've either got to get another one and spend the money to do that, or be okay with the growth rate. One or the other. I just don't want to do anything to mess up my 37-year relationship with Robin, right? Robin's like cool with me working. She loves for me to work, but she knows that I have a propensity to work more than I should. I'm a high D on the disc profile, so I'm ready to go after it. I love the pedal to the metal. I want to learn to be content, but not complacent. I want to grow my company. We're built to grow. That's the way God made us, and I love to grow. I love to thrive. But the truth is you've got to prioritize your priorities. And I already said what was important to me. My faith was important. I have a very regimented schedule in the mornings. I'll spend an hour to an hour and a half every single morning, 5 days a week. I don't do it on the weekends, but I go through a very regimented process with my mornings and reading scripture and prayer time and meditation. So it's important to me. I could have another client then. I could answer emails. I could do all those things, but that's priority to me, just like Robin is priority. And I get off base a little bit. She kind of reels me back and I say, you know what? I've made this commitment. I'm going to be your husband. I'm going to do the things that I should do. And I don't want to lose my marriage because 55% of the marriages end in divorce. I don't want to be one of those casualties. I've got a rock star wife that's been with me since the very beginning. We didn't have anything when we started. And if we lose it all, we still got each other. And that's the way I want it to be. Money is not worth it. Money is not worth losing the relationship. Just like money's not worth it not being at your kids' events. I was running for a political race in Nashville, and I missed one of my girls' ball games. And I saw the handwriting on the wall where this was going. Backed out of the race and said, I don't want to miss, I only got one go through with these kids. And I don't want to be that dad that misses everything and tries to make it up later, because I've seen too many casualties where they never get that relationship forged back. And you just got to say, I'm okay with not making as much money for the benefit of the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So important. And you're right. You only get one shot. And there are a lot of people who say, I'll make it up later. They're young now. I'll make it up later when it's more important. And it doesn't work that way. You're building the foundation every day. I've got 2 young kids, and I'm also very strict about my morning routine, as well as making sure that we have dinner together as a family almost every night. And, that's an investment in them and us and me and the future. And I also get really impatient with the progress I'm making against my business goals. But I have to remind myself, and this conversation is a great reminder, that I'm making the right choices to spend that time with my family rather than working late into the night every night to move me closer to those business goals.
Andy, 2 quick stories I want to tell, and you just said one of them, and I want to kind of dovetail on what you just said about eating dinner together. We have a doctor in our mastermind group, and he studies psychology and the things that make us tick, why we do what we do. And he told a statistic the other day that I'd never heard before. He said that the most preemptive thing you can do to help your teenage children not have premarital sex is to eat dinner together. I'd never heard that. And he said the reason is because a lot of these kids that are having premarital sex are doing it for the attention. And he said when families eat together, they're allowed to talk, they interact, they're getting the attention that they really desire. It's one of the most preemptive strikes you can do, which I thought was very interesting.
Amazing.
The other thing that you said earlier, you mentioned my dad, and I've got to tell this story. I just feel really compelled and led to tell this story to give a real strong example of what we're talking about. There again, I want to say, in no way am I saying don't try to grow your business and make money. Man, I love to make money. I love things money buys for me. I love to go on nice trips, have a nice house, nice car. Please don't hear me say, don't be successful. I want you to be successful. But I think back about my dad when he died in 2006. And we stood at the funeral home. The doors opened at 2:30 in the afternoon. Now, bear in mind, my dad was a horrible business person, but you would love my dad, Andy. If my dad walked in the room, you would want to hug him in 5 minutes. He loved people. He loved relationships. He loved his family unconditional. My dad wanted to hunt and fish, and he wanted to be with his family. He didn't care anything about making money. We grew up in a house that was 600 square feet. There were 6 of us that lived in this house. My dad gave $6,500 for the house I grew up in. And then we later lost it in bankruptcy. A $6,500 house, we lost it in bankruptcy. I had to move in with my cousin. But later got a house, we rented it. That's for a whole nother story. But I looked up and the line started to form at the funeral home at 2:30 in the afternoon. It took an hour and a half to get through the line. The line was to the parking lot. 6 hours I stood there greeting people. Every person said, let me tell you what your dad did for me. Let me tell you how your dad was always available. Let me tell you how your dad ministered to my children. Let me tell you how your dad did this. It was all relational. Not one person in 6 hours said your dad had a nice boat, a nice house, a nice car. They didn't mention a single possession. Yet isn't it ironic that we spend 95% of our time trying to get more stuff when nobody cares about your stuff? Listen, guys, we need to develop stronger relationships. We need to spend more time with our children, with our wives, with our families, and be successful financially, but at the same time, be significant to the needs of those that are around you. That's what my dad was able to accomplish because he loved people, and it's all about the relationship.
Man, that is so huge. Just reminds me of a few things, a couple things. Have you ever seen the movie Big Fish?
No.
Oh, it's a great movie, and it's about this guy and his relationship with his father, who is he's kind of a what's the word? He's like a nonstop liar. He's always telling these big fish stories, and the guy's getting really frustrated with his dad. But what he doesn't realize is that he's been able to build these relationships with so many people over the years, and he gets to his funeral at the end, and just everybody shows up from throughout the movie, and you kind of have this teary-eyed moment where you realize that relationships, what he's been able to build is all that's really matters. And I think about my own father, who was a high school teacher for 30 years and certainly did not make very much money, but he was very responsible with his money. He was able to retire at a fairly young age. But all the times we went out to restaurants, when we did, it wasn't that often, and we would never go anywhere without running into one of his former students who would say, hey, Mr. Storch, really great to see you. I've been doing this and this, and I really learned all this stuff in your class back in the day and appreciate what you did. And it's just those moments, really prove his significance. And that's how you can have an impact on people is through those relationships.
That's awesome, man. What a legacy to leave.
Absolutely. So we only have a few minutes left. I know you've got this book coming out on June 20th, I think, right? View from the Top.
June 20th, that's it. Yep.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the lessons in there, overcoming obstacles, talking about breaking free from some of those. What else do you think is important for people to know that's in this book that they're going to get from it if they go out and buy it?
One of the things is just a strong motivation. I had a lot of grit, determination in my life, and my mom instilled that in me. And I even titled the first chapter, Can't, Couldn't Do It, and Could Did It All. My mom would never allow us to say can't. She'd say, you might not be able to do it, but you're going to at least try. And that instilled in me a lot of self-confidence as a result of her pushing me. She was pushing me through upper limits then. I didn't even realize it. So I titled the first chapter that. I go on and talk about choosing wisely, as we've already talked about. We are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And so I really talk a lot about choosing your friends wisely. I don't want to be around naysayers. I want to be around people that are uplifting, encouraging, that are going to bring great value to my children, my grandchildren. And I talk about choosing your friends wisely. I talk about focus, being an inch wide and a mile deep. Don't be that guy that's an inch deep and a mile wide and you never niche down and focus on anything, because success comes from a great amount of focus. And I talk about the mastermind groups a lot and the value of iron sharpening iron. You got to let the sparks fly sometimes. I talk about telling the truth, being a person of great credibility and honesty and integrity. And then I talk a lot about putting the big rocks in first. In order to have a successful life, you've got to prioritize your priorities. And here's the thing, you've got to come to the realization of what you want. What is success to you? And you've got to identify that. And what is significance, and how can you achieve both of those simultaneously? And I even talk about in the book, there are immeasurable rewards headed your way. You just don't know what they are yet because you've got things confused. And once you get them aligned, it is amazing of an indescribable view you also can have if you follow these principles.
Man, that is some good stuff. I cannot wait to get my hands on that book and read through there. You mentioned the importance of thinking about and being intentional about who you spend time with. You know, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, that Jim Rohn quote. And I just want to say that I really appreciate you spending time with me and my audience today, Aaron. It's been really fantastic. So for anybody that wants to learn more, of course, if they want to buy the book and learn more about your mastermind groups and the programs you have, where do they find out more info?
Couple of things I want to do first. I want to give your audience a gift. So there's 3 documents that I use every day. One is called a personal assessment, where we really dive deep into your ideals, your identity, your career, your faith, your family, things that are really important to you, like your relationships. There's a document, I've taken the price off, so they're not for sale. I'm going to give them to you. The second one is called What Do I Want? And I go through about 30 scenarios, and I ask you very pointed questions in this document about how you can live proactively instead of reactively. You say, okay, Aaron, once I understand who I am and what I want, I don't know what to do next. I wrote a document called Steps to a Productive Day. And it's kind of a to-do list on steroids. And you can go in each and every day and fill out the big priorities that are important to you and how you can accomplish those. You can get those at viewfromthetop.com/hot seat, all in lowercase letters. If you'll go there and get that, I promise you, your life will change radically for the better. It will transform the way you're doing things. As far as the book goes, listen, I can't wait for this thing to launch on June the 20th, but we've got something pretty special for those that pre-order it. If you go to viewfromthetop.com/book, you get the book, View from the Top. I wrote another book called The Mastermind Blueprint. Seth Godin, matter of fact, we just got an endorsement for him. It's on the front cover of the book. I'm going to give you a copy of it as well. And there's 5 interviews that I do with 5 different influencers across the world. One of them runs a $175 billion company. And I got the opportunity to interview him. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You'll have to buy the book to find out. This guy's phenomenal. 20,000 employees worked under him. He was a rock star in his industry. So it's a real fun interview. But I'm going to give all that to you for the price of the book. So if you'll go to viewfromthetop.com/book, pre-order it now, you'll get everything that I just said. Listen, reach out to me at viewfromthetop.com. There's countless ways in order to get in touch with me. I'd love for you to consider joining our mastermind group or one-on-one coaching or the community. And I'd love to just hang out with you and get to know you. So, Andy, thanks for having me on, buddy.
Thanks, Aaron. I've loved hanging out with you today. Can't wait to check all that stuff out. And I definitely recommend everyone else listening check that stuff out as well. So thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it, Aaron.
See you, man.